I had some frat boys in the bar today,
Mhm.
and there was these two, and the one kid came up, and I forgot what he had ordered, and I was like, I don't know what to tell you. You look exactly like all of these other boys.
Caitlin's a
Savage.
And
fucking savage.
so in my defense, there were two of them. One was drinking, and the other one got a sandwich and wasn't drinking. They looked like they could be twins.
Really?
Maybe they were
I'm
related.
dead serious.
They could
No,
have been.
they didn't have the same last name. Like
Mm. Weird.
it
I
was so
hate men
bizarre.
because you know why I hate men is you can't blame like, oh, they don't have the same last name. I'm like, oh, maybe they're married.
How rude. If men.
However, marriage defines a woman.
Well, and like speaking of marriage, like I feel like marriage is like supposed to be kind of like a big deal, but man, we keep talking about women or men too that like just get married like it's nothing. Like
Mhm.
like especially the girl we're talking about today, the woman we're talking about today.
I'll segue into
Um
the episode.
uh
I know Caitlin's good about
like
that.
I feel like we're improving on that. I
Well,
don't know.
for a couple
I
weeks,
really like
remember
talking, so
for a
I know.
couple of weeks we did a really good job with like timing. Like we did our Maura Murray episode like a week before her 17th anniversary or something like that. And then we did
Mhm.
the Lizzie Borden the day that her house went up for sale, which is just crazy.
Yeah,
Like
that one was
weird.
weird.
hey everybody, welcome back to Who What Where, a true crime podcast. We're your hosts, Caitlin.
Hannah.
And Abigail.
And this week we are coming at you with a pretty gnarly one. I
Oh, of
didn't really
course.
We had one
so
week off. I mean, even though the
Caitlin
exorcism
always
was
picks the gnarly ones.
yeah, never mind.
so this is an interesting case because for whatever reason, I feel like not a lot of the bigger podcasts have covered it. Like, there's a lot of documentaries about it, but it just seems like people don't want to touch it because I don't know, it's got a lot to it, and like obviously like the person, it's like about a mother committing crimes against her children, and I think everybody
Fucking
just like
bitch.
that's such a hard thing to like read about. Like as somebody who has spent like the last like 48 hours reading about it, like it's an interesting like I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
crazy because we have this idea that like mothers are supposed to be nurturing and like as like there's some kind of primal instinct that a mother like wants to protect her children, right?
Or
And
there
then
should be.
you get a mother who's like absolutely batshit crazy and everything she does is just harmful to her children. Like she goes against like what our like basic human instinct is, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's like a little bit of a like philosophical question of like obviously it's not bred into us if there's mothers that can do this, you know?
I want to say almost like
I feel like
it
it's a nature
is.
versus nurture question
It
almost.
might be nature versus nurture, but I also think it's possible that it's just like it is like in our like bred into us to take care of our children, but there's like something wrong with the people that don't. Like I don't think that that's like surprising because I
Like
mean
they're the odd
obviously
ones out.
obviously I would hope that nobody's like instinct is to murder people, but
You would think so.
I mean, here we are.
Well, yeah, that would take us
Um
into another question of like, do we believe humans are good or evil? Which that's a whole other thing. We don't need to talk about.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
Wait,
yeah,
wow.
I feel
Yeah.
like injuring children is a line that even like I mentioned this in one of the other episodes that we talked about children in was it's a line that even we don't cross in fiction, like in movies or books we usually don't cross that line, and so it's almost like more shocking then to hear it in like a real true crime case, because we don't even have it in our like pop culture. It's not something that is ever talked about
Because you just like don't.
because you don't want to think about it. I think you're right. You don't
I
want to
mean,
think
yeah.
about it. You don't want to read about it. You don't want to watch it.
It just
Well, it's like when we read If You Tell by Greg Olson for like our January book club pick, like
when Caitlin and Hannah read If You Tell and I gave up because it was that fucked up.
It was
it's
really
pretty
messed up.
intense. So this story, I had to double check like what the name of the mother was in that book because this story has so many similarities.
Oh no. Sounds like I'm gonna love it.
It's like weirdly similar that this is like two completely different cases.
Wait, have we done the If You Tell story?
No.
We should.
Okay. Yeah. It's honestly like it's very, very similar to the one we're going to
Yeah.
talk about right now. So there's actually like there's a book like written about this case that like was made into a movie. I don't think If You Tell was made into a movie, but okay, so we're going to talk about Theresa Knorr this week. She was born Theresa Cross, March 14th, 1946, to parents, I think it's Swanee. It's probably not Swanee, it's Swanee. And Jim in Sacramento, California. She had one like full-blood older sister named Rosemary, and then she had like a sister and a brother that were her mother's children from like her mother's first marriage, so her half siblings.
Or half, yeah.
So the family dynamic in the Cross households when Theresa was growing up was very strange. It's very obvious that like Jim favored Swanee's like son from her first marriage because I think Jim had this idea that he really wanted a boy, he really wanted a son, and Swanee only gave him 2 daughters, and so he kind of favored.
What are we in the 1800s? She gave
Yeah,
him 2 daughters and
right.
son, and he was so
He like favored Swanee's son, whose name for some reason I didn't write down and I can't remember what it was. It was like I think it was William or Bill. But he like let him get away with a lot of stuff. Like he was kind of like a little shithead, and like letting teenage boys get away with a lot of shit when they're terrible only turns them into like terrible adult men. So Rosemary, on the other hand, was like, she was not the favorite child in any sense. She did a lot of like housework. Like she was basically like an in-home Cinderella. So this was Theresa's older sister. And then Theresa, as if things could not have started off worse for her, like her mother like thought she was the greatest thing since sliced bread. Like she constantly was telling her like, you're so beautiful and smart and pretty and like you're special, and like and I think quite honestly it gave Theresa like a complex about herself. Like she kind of thought she was like the sun shone out of her ass, you know.
This week, weird euphemisms.
We love those.
Rosemary, her sister, so Rosemary was like really popular. She was tall and like she was very pretty. They were both very pretty, but Rosemary was like much more popular with girls. It seemed like Theresa like tended to alienate herself from girls, probably partially because she was like weirdly obsessed with like sex and like being promiscuous, and like she was like overly interested in
so
sex.
women
from a young
didn't
age.
like her because they thought she was a slut.
Yeah, I mean, definitely back in
Slut
this
shamed
day,
her.
it was
Yeah.
Theresa's father, Jim, he worked really hard. He worked at like a dairy plant or something, and that was like his life, was working. And he eventually was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and he got like a brain surgery that didn't work, and so he had to quit his job. So suddenly like he was the one that was like solely providing for the family, and they didn't have that anymore. And because he was like very depressed and distraught at the idea of like not being able to like provide for his family, he became like super depressed, and he often like took out his anger on Theresa and Rosemary, like physically. Swanee and Theresa were like super close, and Swanee died in 1961 of congestive heart failure, and Theresa was like absolutely crushed. Because now she was kind of like, she was living with her father and they couldn't afford to live in that home anymore. It was eventually foreclosed on. So Theresa was like kind of looking for the next guy that to take care of her,
To take care of her,
essentially.
yeah.
Like
Well, because her father
he was
didn't
looking for
really care for her anyway. He was more, wasn't he
like
more like,
go
uh,
ahead.
sorry. I mean, he was ill, obviously, so that was one part. But then he also didn't really like her and her sister. He liked the older brother more.
I think he had this like weird perception that
So
he
there's probably a
like,
lot of neglect going on.
yeah, and I think honestly they didn't get along nearly as well in her and her mom. And she was also pretty depressed when her mom died because I mean, how could they not have been close? Her mom like worshipped her, you know.
Right.
So on September 29th, 1962, Theresa, who was now 16 years old, this was the year after her mother died, she dropped out of school to marry Clifford Sanders, who was 5 years older than her. And she had only known him for a few months at this point when they got married. A lot of people think that like Theresa, who was young and beautiful and like pretty promiscuous and basically she was constantly like teasing him and like was not letting him have sex with her, and he was constantly begging for it, and like it was like this whole back and forth like cat and mouse chase. And so of course he wanted to marry her, right? He's like, he thinks with his dick he's a man.
Well, and she wanted to get married because she needed
Yeah,
to take care of
exactly.
her.
Like, well, and like especially from the perspective of Clifford's brother, who was like out, he was in California working with him. Like they kind of went to California together. He was from Alabama, I believe. His brother was like, this girl is like clearly like crazy or a gold digger, or she's like kind of just seducing you, dude. He was very like anti that marriage. Like he kind of was trying to break it up from the start. And to be honest, Theresa like barely knew Clifford, but she knew that she could like
He had a steady job,
pussy whip him, you know?
and he could take care of her, and that's what all
Yeah.
she needed at this point in her
Yeah.
life.
She became pregnant like almost immediately. She gave birth to their son Howard on July 16th, 1963. The couple fought a lot because Theresa was like, she had like a jealousy issue, along with she was constantly accusing him of being unfaithful, which I mean, obviously he didn't like deserve it, but I think he was like, he didn't really want to be married, I don't think. Like he was constantly like flirting with women at the bars, and he drank like a decent amount. He would hit her usually when he was drunk, and there was actually like one occasion that Theresa said that like he like punched her in the face, like close-handed punched. And she actually like she reported it, and it kind of comes into play later. So while Theresa was pregnant with her and Clifford's daughter Sheila on July 6, 1964, Clifford and Theresa, they got into a particularly bad fight one night, and Clifford basically was like, I'm leaving for good, and he like went to walk for the door and like seemed like he was pretty serious about it, and Theresa like shot him in the back with a rifle. The bullet lodged into his heart, and he actually ended up dying. Obviously, she was arrested and charged, but she pled not guilty, citing self-defense, and like she kind of used that previous incident where he punched her.
As like evidence.
Yeah, kind of, because she did report it to the police, I think. And Clifford's family like testified during her, like whether or not they were going to try her or whatever. And said that like she was like super, super, honestly crazy and like manipulative and like emotionally and physically abusive to Clifford. Not to say that he wasn't like necessarily not physically abusive to her, but they were saying like she was dishing it out as well. And then actually Theresa's sister Rosemary, who they never had a good relationship. They were pretty competitive with each other because they I don't know, they were like similar ages and like,
well, one of them had the
yeah.
affection, like the extra affection from their mother, and they were both beautiful, and so I mean I could see how they could have like kind of a competing,
Yeah,
like a
totally.
competition between the two, because they're like, who's better, you know, kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Oh, definitely. Um, and anyway, Teresa's sister Rosemary like spoke at the like trial, and she was basically like, yeah, I can see Teresa like wanting to kill him just so he wouldn't be with somebody else, because she was like that possessive.
Damn.
So I think because I can kind of see that like she might have been given like some sympathy at trial because she was pregnant like during the trial. And I wonder if she got kind of like an extra layer of like, oh, she's like this beaten woman and, you know, whatever. So she was acquitted. She was acquitted on September 22nd, 1964, and then she gave birth to Sheila March 16th, 1965. So she was like not super pregnant,
Yeah,
but
she was barely pregnant when she was doing
yeah,
the
I
trial.
think she probably was using it as like a sympathy
As
card.
like a crutch kind of.
Yeah. So now Teresa is a single mother of two, right? She's got Howard and Sheila. She started like heavily drinking, especially at the local like American Legion that was in the town that she lived in. She met like several veterans over the years. She met Estelle Thornberry, which don't be fooled, it's a man. I don't know why his name is Estelle,
Weird.
but I was trying to figure out if it was like a lesbian relationship, but it's a man. She began a relationship with him, and eventually they moved in together. I think he moved into the apartment where she lived with her kids. But I wrote, psych. She only wanted him to move in because she wanted like a live-in nanny, basically. Like that's how she kind of like saw their relationship. She would just like leave him with her kids to like watch her kids, and she would be gone for like days at a time drinking and partying. So obviously they split up pretty quickly, but only because Estelle Thornberry like found out that she was also seeing his friend like on the side. In addition to using him as a babysitter. Teresa actually, this is like a separate guy, but Teresa ended up meeting her second husband, Robert Knorr, at the American Legion. He was a Marine veteran. So this is like her at least third romantic relationship that stemmed from her drinking problem. She became pregnant with his child, and they married July 9th, 1966. Then they had 4 more children. So they had Susan in 1966, William in 1967, Robert Jr. in 1968, and then Teresa Terry. Her name is Teresa, but she goes by Terry, obviously.
So there
and she was
7 or 6 kids.
This makes 6. So
Okay.
1970 is when Terry was born. Yeah. So now they have 6 children. Like, and Robert has kind of like taken on. He ends up like legally adopting Howard and Sheila. So they like their last names are
A big happy family.
Yeah, I mean,
Sort of.
except Teresa was fucking batshit, and she like was constantly being like, "You're cheating on me," like. And honestly, she was just like a straight up fucked up mom. She was still doing the thing where she would like disappear for days, like while she was drinking and like partying and stuff. And they actually got divorced the year that Terry was born. Robert, like, I want to think that Robert was like a pretty good dude, but Teresa like refused to let him see the children, like even though he tried really hard. So like, I don't know, I have a little bit of sympathy for him. Like, I wonder if like things would have gone differently, you know, if he was like more involved in their lives. But she was like crazy, and he probably was like, I don't know if I want to like deal with that, you know. So in 1971, she married a railroad worker. I'm gonna like skim through this part because this isn't as important. In 1971, she married her third husband, who was a railroad worker. She also basically used him as a live-in nanny as well for her now 6 children. They divorced in 1972. I think based on like the dates, if I remember correctly, they weren't even married for a full year.
Some Kim Kardashian style stuff.
But the only reason that he finally divorced her was because he was convinced that she was cheating on him.
Well, I mean, if she would spend days away from the house and get drunk, I wouldn't be that surprised if she was. She probably was.
Yeah. So she married her fourth husband, who was a copy editor at the Sacramento Union, which is like a newspaper. They got married in August of 1976. Her daughter Susan became really close with him, and Theresa got like super jealous. She has like some serious like possessive jealousy like issues rooted in like insecurity, I guess. I
For
I don't
sure.
know like where
Well,
it's
and how
necessarily
and
stemming from,
clearly
but
you have to be pretty like messed up in the brain to be jealous of your own daughter having a relationship with someone who you're marrying and bringing into the house as like
right.
a father
Well,
figure,
and she
right?
exactly, she wanted a father figure. At this point, she was like no older than 10. I can't remember what year
It's
she was
just
born.
bizarre to me that she's like going through men and like not even just dating them. She's marrying all these men, which I feel
Yeah,
like
exactly.
again kind of points to the fact that there's something going on here. She's looking for something that she
And
missed in
she's
her
not
childhood, I
finding,
guess.
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Some
Um
weird shit going on.
so they got married in August of 1976 and they divorced in November of 1976. The reason that she says that she divorced him or that she claims was because she discovered that he like as a hobby like took like nude photos of women like consensually, like he took nude photos of like models. And she like was like, that's, I'm jealous, like you're not gonna do that, like that's weird, you know.
But again, something that you should have found out before you married him. So
Exactly.
Teresa,
There
just
you
chill
go.
out with the marrying stage, okay?
Anyway, so this is kind of when shit hits the fan. She's gone through 4 husbands now. She has 6 children and she's fucking crazy. Okay? She her mental and her physical health like started to decline like really rapidly, right? Like she gained a ton of weight. Like she was like she's petite. She's only 5'4", and she was like she was really thin and like obviously she had a pretty good body cuz she was getting all these men like into her, you know. Yeah, she gained a ton of weight, and she kind of became like, I don't know, she kind of transformed from this like mother who like you could see in like her like mental health that her like she was losing all of her self-esteem. Like she kind of like before this thought she was hot shit and she like thrived on the attention of men, right? And now she's like no longer physically attractive, and in obviously this is like in her mind, and she became like super paranoid apparently, so she pulled all of her kids out of school and like wouldn't let them leave the house. She like turned off the phone service to their house and like nobody was allowed to come over. If they still had any friends at this point, the friends had to come to their apartment. Like they were like the kids weren't allowed to go anywhere. So up until this point, they lived in Orangevale, California, and they eventually moved to Sacramento into a 2-bedroom apartment. Apparently, this like area of Sacramento was like known for like a lot of like crime, like prostitution and drug use and like drug distribution and like so it was not a very good area. Not to mention it was a 2-bedroom and there was 7 of them. So Howard, the oldest, didn't come with them. He like left the family. He lived like a pretty normal life, and he like actually when all of this happened, he like came out and was like, yeah, she was crazy even back then, you know, but he managed to like avoid a lot of the like physical abuse, I guess. So I guess apparently like the neighbors in this apartment building claimed that like when they would like rarely see the children like seemed really like nervous, and they were constantly like looking at their mother for like confirmation that they were allowed to do stuff, like telltale signs of an abusive situation. And because they weren't going to school, most of the kids like never got more than an 8th grade education. I think that was like the highest of all of them was like 8th grade. Which is pretty sad because like if nothing else, like you're ruining them for the rest of their life, you know? Like they can't, I don't know, they can't like function normally without like
It just
some
seems weird
semblance of
too
education.
that I mean, obviously her mental health was severely messed up if she did all this, but like I don't even know why you would think the first thing you would think when you were kind of going through a weird mental health thing was, oh, let me take all of my 6 kids out of school,
Yeah.
move them to a city, and just never let them outside the apartment. Like, what was she paranoid about? Like,
Um
that's maybe you'll
I
get to
think
that. I don't
I
know.
think some of her paranoia was like her thinking people would think she was a bad mother when she was. Like that's the thing, like she actually was,
So
but she was also
she was
she was like
fighting that with being an even worse mother.
I
She's like, oh no, I
guess
don't want
and
people to know. So let me just
well
be even
and
shittier.
the thing that like really starts to suck for me with this story is that like I think that somebody kind of like just turned a blind eye a lot to this. Like the kids even like several times throughout the rest of this story will like try to get help from like adult government officials, right? Like they're trying to find an adult that will listen to them, and just about everybody doesn't believe them. They're
Well, and
like, "Oh, you're overreacting. Like she's
how
not
did no one
abusing you." Like
question them when she took them out of school? Like all
I
of the
think
kids at once.
I think it was honestly long enough ago that like if you claimed you were homeschooling your kids, like they couldn't really say anything, I think.
Yikes.
You know? Um so Teresa, obviously, spoiler alert, whatever, began like severely abusing and beating her children. Like it became a very physical manifestation of her psychopathy, I guess. She often would like accuse, this is like the part that kind of reminded me of If You Tell. Teresa would often accuse the kids of like doing things that they didn't do. But then she would like punish them for it, for not admitting to it, and like, go
The
ahead.
weird thing about this kind of process of accusing them of doing something and then beating them, to me, it's weird because it's like they're trying to justify it in their head. Like, oh, well, they deserve
Yeah.
all these things and I'm going to abuse them or beat them because they deserve it because they did all these horrible
Well,
things.
and
So
like
then
it's like
it's weird because clearly at some point in their life, that's how they were treated, I would
uh-huh.
assume, where, someone was like, oh, you did this really horrible thing, I'm going to beat you. And that is the only way they know how to parent. They're like, oh, well, my kids don't do anything bad. Let me just pretend like they did something. So in
Yeah.
that sense, it almost is like a total nature versus nurture, totally on the nurture side kind of question. Like you're not going to want to like abuse your children. But if your
Exactly.
entire life you were abused as a child for things that you did, and then your kids don't do that, I mean, I don't
Uh-huh.
know. But that's my first thought, is that like she was clearly trying to justify it in her mind, even though she was messed up. She was trying to
Well, and
justify the abuse.
it's like a
They did something wrong.
it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because she would like when they denied that they did something wrong, she would like take that as a sign that they were lying, and so she would punish them even more, you know? So I guess there was like this one tool that she would use to beat them often. The kids had like they had given it a name. It was called the Board of Education, and it was like just this wooden paddle that she had like wrapped like electrical tape around one end to like make a handle. She actually on one occasion held like a gun to her youngest daughter Terry's head and like threatened to kill her. She locked Terry in a chest freezer once for supposedly telling people that Theresa was abusing them, which she was. But Theresa doesn't want anybody to know she's a shitty mother, you know, because she has this complex, you know.
Of If You Tell.
Yeah.
It really does.
Terry is like one of the only ones that, I don't want to say she came out unscathed, because obviously that's not true, but she was one of the only ones that like was talking essentially. And she later said that like most of the abuse wasn't focused on her. She was often like kind of in the background, like watching a lot of it. Because she was like a couple years younger than all of them. Like, so she says that she thinks Theresa was like upset in a way that the girls were like young and beautiful and they were like maturing into like young women. Mm-hmm. And while again, Theresa was getting old and ugly and like nobody liked her, you know.
Children. Like,
oh, right, exactly.
To want to like vicariously live through your children, which is not really right, but anyway, that's a completely different story, versus like literally being jealous of your own children and like
right? Like
I
not
mean,
wanting them
ugh.
to succeed in life because you are past your prime and like
I really think it
you're
was because her
unlovable
mother
because you're
gave her
crazy.
her mom gave her such a superiority complex that when she saw other
Totally.
people better than her, even her own children, she was so delusional that she was like, freaking
Oh,
out about it.
absolutely. Yeah.
Crazy, crazy, crazy.
Oh, totally. So specifically the older boys, she would often like burn with cigarettes. Um, and she obviously beat them with the paddle. She would like sleep deprive a lot of them, like especially the two older boys. She would sleep deprive them and then like she would play a game where she threw knives at them to try to hit them. And I guess they just kind of had to get out of the way and
It's
hopefully
only
they
a
didn't get
game if
hit.
everyone is having fun. Okay, Teresa? We didn't teach you that.
I know, I guess not. I guess nobody told her that. Newsflash. So Susan and Sheila were essentially prostituted by their mother to help like make money for the household. Because I mean, she had 6 children. Like she was obviously getting money from welfare, but it probably wasn't enough to support 6 fucking children. So in 1982, I guess she only has 5 at this point. Howard's not here anymore, but in 1982, Theresa like became completely convinced that her 4th husband, the guy that had a close relationship with Susan, had turned Susan into a witch.
So
And
she
now,
crazy.
Okay, now we know she's
yeah,
really insane. Like she's not
she
just a crappy person; she's literally crazy. Okay,
not only did she
no.
think her daughter Susan was a witch, she thought that her justification was that, well, Susan's putting a spell on me to make me gain weight. Because by the end of all of this, like she's severely overweight. She's like 250 pounds, like maybe more than that actually, but she's like pretty overweight, and like she had this complex because she was always really young and beautiful and thin and like petite. And so she was like, something must be going on. Like that's the only reason I'm losing.
Way
yeah,
that she was gaining weight normally, like because
the only plausible explanation is that my teenage daughter is a witch and she put a spell on me. Like
same
what?
Susan, or same Teresa. I feel the same way.
Same Teresa.
Seems like a lot of steps for I'm crazy, but okay.
Right? Like that's like I'm crazy with extra steps. So because her 2 daughters were very young and beautiful and they were thin, Theresa did not like that. She wanted them to be fat like her. What? And she on several occasions would feed them macaroni and cheese that she had like added like chunks of like lard and Crisco to, like just absolutely massive chunks of it. She would force feed them this, and basically like she would feed it to them until they completely threw it up, and then she would make them eat it again, in an effort to make them not thin anymore, I guess, you know.
Teresa.
Hannah looks like she wants to say something. Or was that your distraught face?
I'm distraught, to be honest, because like it's just so like, because I think the part about this too is if you're force feeding your children not even just like regular food, like food that's artificially added in,
like lard, Crisco, like literally
and things that are gonna like stop your heart,
right?
You know, like she's essentially making it so even if these kids survive, which I don't know what happens, but they're gonna be could possibly have like health effects. I mean, aside from the mental effects they're gonna have, but you know, like
right, yeah.
It's like, what the hell is wrong with you, Teresa? Like, just eat less. I mean, clearly she must be eating something that's making her gain weight, or something is going on that's making her gain weight that she could. I think
it's because she didn't do anything. She took no initiative to get a job. Like, and she basically like sat on the couch all day and watched TV.
And she probably like. They probably ordered food a lot. She probably, I doubt she cooked for her children except for this nasty macaroni and cheese.
Right.
But again, it's just like, really, how severely messed up do you have to be so like insecure about yourself that you think your children are witches? And then on top of that, you're going to force feed them fat.
To try to make them fat. Them fat. Like what?
Which I agree with. However, I feel that like this woman obviously there's something wrong with her, and it's like not very uncommon to get like super super depressed and like just start gaining
Oh,
weight.
no.
Or
It was probably like a lot of things that were making her gain weight. And I
right,
think that the psychosis was contributing to her like in inability to accept a lot of things.
That it could
Like
have been anything that she was
it
doing.
was definitely
Well,
like a
and also
psychotic
she was
thing.
abusing her children, and she was, coming up with ways to make sense of that in her mind. So
right.
it's not like
Hmm.
she was missing a few marbles. So
Yeah.
it's fine.
Like it
Not fine, but
I can see how she was gaining weight. It was just like the fact that she was like so spiteful of her own daughters for being like pretty and young, you know,
mhm.
because she wasn't pretty and young anymore, like anyway.
Mhm.
So at some point Susan got out. Susan is the older of the two daughter. So there's three daughters, but it's Susan, Sheila, and then Terry. So at some point Susan got out. It's weird because like I've seen sources that say both stories. Like I'm not sure which one's true. Some people said that she got like picked up by a cop for like selling herself on the street, for like walking the street. And then some people say that she was like running around and somebody found her and took her to a psychiatric hospital. So she told whoever picked her up that Theresa was abusing her, like straight up. And Theresa denied it and said, no, my daughter has like mental issues, like she's crazy. And the children ended up being interviewed by like CPS, and their mother was like in the room with them, and eager to please like all children of abusive parents would be. They claimed that she had never hit them before because she was in the room with them. And basically the matter was just completely dropped, so
Yeah, I
Susan
mean,
had to go
that's
back home.
like interviewing children for parental abuse 101 to not have the parent in there.
Yeah, I
Who
I
are
don't
these
know how that
people?
works, or I don't know how it worked in the 80s, late 70s, but I can imagine there was like somebody should have been like, wow, maybe we should talk to them not only without their mother but individually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
individually and especially without their mother. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, if they wanted to get like a lawyer or another guardian of some sort,
Yeah.
fine. But if the
The
mother is
person
the one that,
possibly abusing them.
yeah, the possible abuser, which in this case, the abuser,
Mhm.
like really, that seems really like on the part of the police that they didn't think about that.
Yeah, it's just I don't
So,
know. They really failed this family, honestly. Um I know that happens a lot, and there's a lot of stories like where in the end you're like, wow, the state and the government, or whatever you want to call it, they really failed these children, honestly. So after that, Theresa obviously was like very mad at Susan. She's like, I can't believe you did that. Like, what the fuck? How dare you tell them I'm abusing you when I'm actually abusing you?
Oh,
So she kept Susan like tied underneath the dining room table like at all times, with a gag in her mouth most of the time, and she would like force her kids to kind of like keep watch to make sure she didn't escape. She was like, now she was completely a prisoner in her own home. She around this time she started like forcing Robert and William, her two sons, to like beat Susan for her. And this kind of went on for several months to a year, that they were beating the children by proxy. Like, you know what I'm saying?
yeah, that reminds
They were
me
doing
of,
it. If
Susan.
you tell, I know.
No, the other one. Was there
Oh,
another one that was very similar? But yeah, if you tell, it was very similar.
yeah.
But what was that one? Susan, Sylvia Likens.
Oh,
That was
yeah.
very similar, where she would cause
Force like the boys and stuff
the
to
other
do it.
boys
Yeah.
to abuse her, as if
And
again it's another kind of like tactic almost for her to like make sense of why she was letting this happen. Like, oh, I'm not doing it,
yeah.
they're doing it.
Yeah.
I'm telling them to, but they have the full choice to do it or not,
Well,
which obviously that's not the case, because why would your children like disobey you when you're abusive to them? But anyway.
I
totally.
mean, it just makes me think of the Sylvia Likens case.
That's what you were saying.
Oh, sorry.
So honestly, like there's a little bit of like there's a party that would be on the side of the boys and like saying like she was clearly abusing them as well. Like, they were probably doing this out of self-preservation. Like, but I think there was probably a point where it didn't fall under self-preservation anymore because they were old enough to realize that it was wrong.
I mean, again, like,
because they were like in their late teens by this point, and they
And
were
you would
abusing
know.
their child sisters who were smaller than
would
them and couldn't
know.
fight back. Like,
You would know that it was wrong. I agree with that. But you would also have to kind of like understand what their idea of right and wrong was. They have like very low education levels, and they probably were abused by their mom, and they've only ever seen their mother abuse their other siblings, right?
well, and for
So-
the small part that she was with their father, she was abusing their father too, if not
Right. So it's not like
verbally.
they've ever
Like, you know what I
seen-
mean?
And then
Yeah.
it's not like in a case where they go to school where they can see other people at school like, oh, I get suspended if I hit somebody. That's probably a wrong thing to do. Versus now, all they see is their mom, who, from what they probably learned in school up to that point, your mother is someone that you're supposed to trust and you're supposed to follow their teachings and all that kind of stuff. So I would be more on the side that I understand that they should know it was wrong, but they were probably scared out of their minds of Theresa. Like, afraid.
I don't know.
Whether or not- I mean,
It's
she's killed somebody.
yeah.
So I wouldn't put
It's
that
like
past her. I don't know.
it's a tricky situation because I can't for the life of me remember if it was Robert or William like had a job. He worked at a movie theater. And like they were like they like had normal interactions, I think. Like I think they like did things outside of the home. The boys had a lot more freedom than the girls did. She like rarely let the girls leave the house, but the boys kind of like more or less did what they wanted to do as long as they were like helping her beat their younger sisters. Anyway, kind of deviating on that. In
I think that's a good
1982,
tangent to talk about, though, because I get what you're saying.
totally, yeah.
Where if they are going out in public and they have jobs and they have these like lives, you would for sure know that it was
Well,
wrong. But at the
here's
same
the
time,
thing.
you would still want to please your mother, I would assume,
Well, and they're both
in some
like
messed up way.
they're both like deeply disturbed people, Robert and William. Is that a result of Theresa? Probably. But like to this day, like they are still like, I don't know. You know what I'm saying, I guess? I don't know how else to put it, I guess, but their lives were like seriously affected by her. I mean, whether or not there was like a point where they should have gotten out or stopped helping with the abuse, like I guess that those are questions like up in the air, but they were definitely victims as well. But like it's hard to feel as bad for them because it seems like she was like
Right, like clearly in this case,
they had opportunities to leave.
yeah, I agree.
Like, and as the story progresses, you guys might see it like a little bit differently. Obviously they were children, but
The story hasn't progressed yet.
sorry, I know we keep like going on a tangent.
No, I just mean like it feels like already so much has happened.
Well, yeah, so more shit's about to happen. So in 1982, there was an incident where Susan ended up getting shot in the back by Theresa's like 44 caliber pistol that she like kept in her bedside drawer. So Robert claims that it was actually Terry who shot Susan, like, and it was like an accident, like somebody yelled something and it scared her and she was already holding the gun, because Theresa had like told her to like, hey, hold this to Susan so she doesn't go anywhere, I'm gonna go do something. But then Terry says that it was actually Theresa who shot her, and it was like during like an altercation about her being a witch. And I don't know, Terry, I have the most sympathy for Terry. Like, obviously Susan and Sheila as well, but like current day, I just feel like Terry's probably
the youngest,
has,
right?
she's the youngest, and like, I don't know, the fact that she was like telling people for so long and nobody believed her for so long, like that had to have not felt good. So I'm sure that if she was in a position where she was like trying to not admit wrongdoing, like I can see why she would be like, well, no, it was my mom. It wasn't me. Even if it was her, even if it was an accident, you know? So she got shot in the back. The boys, Robert and William, moved her into the bathtub, like off the kitchen floor, and they like handcuffed her or tied her or whatever to like a soap dish in the bathroom, and they just kind of left her there. Like, either she dies or she gets better. And somehow, even with a bullet in her spine, she survived somehow. Somehow she managed to not lose like enough blood. I don't know. So Theresa, realizing that she wasn't going to die, like started kind of like nursing her back to health and like started like, I don't know, feeding her, and she like cleaned up the wound and whatever. Susan now is absolutely like freaked the fuck out, like scared out of her mind, obviously, as if she wasn't before. And she begged to be like allowed to leave. She was like, please just let me leave. I won't tell anybody what's going on. Like, just let me leave. But so eventually she moved back into the kitchen and was like tied up under the table again. So there was one like particular fight in summer of 1984. Theresa stabbed her in the back with a pair of like kitchen scissors. Susan like begged and begged and begged for Theresa to just let her go. She's like, I promise I won't say anything. Like, please just let me leave like your house, right? She really, I guess she wanted to move to like Alaska or something. I think this was a detail that was like relayed by Terry. So a few weeks,
as far away as possible.
Pretty much, yeah. So a few weeks after like the stabbing incident, Theresa finally was like, okay, I'll let you leave, but you have to let me take the bullet out. Can you guys guess why she doesn't want the bullet in her?
So it can be traced back.
The evidence.
Because it's evidence, yeah.
But like at the same
she like
time,
didn't want her to even have the possibility of going to the police and being like, see this bullet in my back? It's from my mom shooting me.
I feel like it's partially evidence and partially she didn't want, she wanted to cause her more harm. She wanted to make her feel the pain. Even more so than when she got shot.
Yeah. I mean, so she succeeded in making her feel more pain. So on the day of the surgery, heavy quotes, Theresa gave her like some antipsychotics and she made her drink like a shit ton of whiskey until she passed out. Because that's what anesthesia is, right? Like it's the same thing.
Yeah.
So then there's like two different sources. It was either Theresa or her son Robert, like by proxy, that Theresa was like directing him to do it. They cut so Robert was 15 when this happened. So I don't know if it was Robert or Theresa. It depends on like the source. It's a weird thing to vary, but they made a little incision with an X-Acto knife and dug the bullet out. So, and then Theresa flushed the bullet down the toilet. An X-Acto knife. Just sit with that for a second. They like cut this poor woman's skin open. Probably didn't sanitize it. No wonder she fucking, oh my gosh. Anyway, over the next week, Susan got really fucking ill, obviously, because they cut her open with a dirty X-Acto knife that had probably been used for other shit. Her mother, at one point, realizing that she was like infected, tried to like give her like random antibiotics and ibuprofen to like treat her. And then because Theresa is a fuckwad, she was convinced that Susan was like faking being sick. Like she was literally like delirious and passed out all the time, she was unconscious on the kitchen floor. And Theresa was like telling her children like, no, she's faking it. Just go around her. Like, don't give her anything. Like, just step over her unconscious body. It'll be great.
Like Sylvia Likens.
A little bit. So
she's faking it.
Or
at
also,
some point,
like if you tell when like the person was laying there, like the one, was it Nikki? That would always, no, not Nikki, the other one.
Kathy?
No, the other one. Tori. Always, like try to help the people, which was so sweet. And then, but like she was told not to help them because they needed this. They needed this. It was to make them better.
So Susan lost control of her bladder because she was like seriously ill. And Theresa just like put like diapers on her. This is like a somewhat important detail for later. So Susan became like her skin turned yellow because she was septic and she had jaundice from being like severely malnourished. And she was just the whole time lying on the kitchen floor. So Theresa, being the psychotic bitch that she is, saw that her skin was like starting to turn yellow and she looked disgusting and was like, well, she's possessed by a demon.
Again,
obviously.
Back ass
Obviously.
To come up with like,
what's the other explanation?
oh my God.
And she was like, well, obviously she's possessed. Obviously the only way that everybody knows this, like obviously the only way to get rid of the demon is to burn it. Like,
I'm
duh.
to think that Theresa didn't have much of an education herself.
I mean, she dropped out of high school like after sophomore year, but this is like a little bit different. I don't know if this like goes beyond uneducated. This is like she's fucking crazy. So on July 16th, 1984, Theresa packed up all of Susan's belongings into trash bags, kind of taking her entire existence out of the apartment. She bound up Susan's arms and legs and duct taped her mouth, and her and her sons put her in the car. And they drove to a place called Squaw Valley. And basically they like found like kind of deserted part of the road, and they like just put her on the side of the road with all of her belongings, like her entire life, in these trash bags. And Theresa dumped gasoline all over Susan, who at this point was not dead. And she lit her on fire. And so Susan, the like fire that was created by this was like still smoldering the next day. This is when they found the body. So in the autopsy, they determined that she was still alive when she first started being burned to death. I don't think she would have been in a position to struggle that much, but she, at the time, they couldn't identify her at all. Like, there was only like half of her face that was even still like untouched. Her back was like untouched because she was laying on the ground, but they could make out like the gash from the X-Acto knife and the scissors. And anyway, she became a Jane Doe. Like, nobody knew anything. They were like, this is just a random person. This is a body dump, you know? And remember, she was wearing a diaper when they dumped her too. So at the time, the police were wondering if there was like a baby involved. I don't think she was wearing it. I think it was like next to her. So things only got worse for Sheila once Susan was gone. She like continued to force feed Sheila. Sheila actually had like 2 chipped front teeth from Theresa like forcing a spoon into her mouth. Yeah. So in May of 1985, Sheila, basically by this time, because she was prostituting herself and bringing money home for Theresa, she was in kind of Theresa's goodwill, you know, like she could kind of come and go whenever she wanted. She was supporting the family through selling her body, more or less. And this didn't last that long, though, because Theresa is extremely jealous and has a jealous heart. And she accused Sheila of becoming pregnant and getting an STD, which Theresa said that she caught from their, like, toilet in their apartment, because that's obviously how STDs work.
Again, no education. Theresa was...
And Sheila obviously was like, no, bitch, I didn't do that. And so Theresa tied her up under the dining room table like she did to Susan. And Sheila was like, I mean, adamant. She was like, I didn't do that, obviously. Like, what are you talking about? And Theresa got annoyed that she wasn't admitting to this. And she tied her up, like hog tied her. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but it's like your legs and your ankles or not your wrists and your ankles like are all tied together.
Yeah, you're tied up like a pig that's like roasting on a...
Yeah. And she put her in like a broom closet that was supposedly like 2 feet by 2 feet. Super hot. Didn't have any like ventilation. Obviously, it was a closet. So Sheila was in the closet for weeks without food or water. Terry says that she would like try to sneak her like water, and on one occasion she snuck her like a beer or something. And the whole time Sheila was like screaming and crying from the other side of the store, and Theresa would literally just turn the TV up and like completely ignore her. She obviously, like, the kids, with the exception of Terry, weren't doing anything to help her. Terry got scolded a couple times from like trying to sneak her water. And Terry, I guess, like later said in an interview, quote, "She wanted Sheila to confess. That was mother's way. Beat them until they confess," end quote.
Major if you tell vibes once again.
Yeah. So finally, Sheila, like absolutely delirious and dehydrated and starving, essentially, she finally was like, "Okay, yeah, I admit it, whatever, like, let me the fuck out." And Theresa, of course, was like, "No, well, you're lying. Duh. Like, you would have admitted before this."
So why are you punishing me?
Didn't take her out. She's still in there. So Sheila eventually died, obviously, on June 21st, 1985. The kids like remember hearing her like screaming a ton, and then all of a sudden she just wasn't screaming anymore, essentially. So 3 days after they were pretty sure she was dead, so she wasn't screaming for like 3 days, they finally opened the door, and here was her rotting body. Theresa ordered her sons to dispose of it because it was starting to smell, obviously, as rotting bodies do. They put her in like a cardboard box that apparently whichever one worked at the movie theater. For some reason, I didn't write that down. One of the boys worked at a movie theater, and he brought home a like a box from the movie theater. It was the biggest one they could find because they needed something to put her body in. So they put Sheila into this box, and they drove it somewhere to burn it. They actually, I guess, apparently like stopped at one point intending to like get out and burn her right there, and a cop pulled up, and somehow Theresa like talked them out of it. Like talked and was like, "Oh no, we're just stopping, the boys have to pee," even though like they literally had Sheila's body like in the car with them in a box, and she smelled like a rotting corpse. Like,
so horrible, because I mean, obviously all these people did really horrible things, but at the same time, like, the system just failed these kids so badly.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, and so they still dumped the body. They didn't burn it like they were going to, probably because they got spooked by the cop. So because they didn't burn it or didn't even try to, I think it was on like a more conspicuous place. She was found like that same day. But again, they like had no idea who she was. And so she was a Jane Doe. So the smell in the apartment, even after they took her body out, became like super extreme because like the rot had like seeped into everything else in that closet.
Oh my god.
Theresa was afraid somebody would like smell it from like the other apartments and like come asking, because I feel like there's not a lot of smells like a rotting body.
How long did they leave her in the closet?
She was dead for like 3 days.
Dead. Okay.
Yeah. But this is like completely separate from the fact that she was probably urinating and defecating on herself.
Right.
Or at least doing whatever bodily functions she was still capable of doing, you know? Sheila had, before she died, begged Terry to just run. But Theresa like wouldn't let her leave until Terry agreed to like burn the apartment down. So on September 29th, 1986, Theresa like took all the belongings out of the house and left Terry behind to burn it down. So in the night, Terry dumped like 3 containers of lighter fluid on the floor and set it on fire. Obviously, this is not how fires work, and so not a lot of the apartment was burned because the neighbors like smelled smoke, and I don't really know why she thought this would work. The neighbors smelled smoke and called the fire department. So the closet that Sheila was originally in, like, it wasn't even touched by the fire, which is good because they actually like ended up taking like like physical evidence from it somehow. So after Terry left, kind of started her life. She had like several rough years where she was doing drugs and prostituting herself because she really had no other way to survive. She was severely traumatized. And then Theresa, on the other hand, kind of like just went into hiding. We don't know a lot about what she did right after this. All of her children like completely stopped talking to her. I did see somebody that was saying that one of the boys like kind of stayed in contact with his mom, but
Robert.
it's my understanding that like most of them were like, she's crazy, like we don't want anything to do with her. So Terry used a like old driver's license of Sheila's at one point to kind of like become like to pretend she was an adult because she was only like 15 or 16 at this
so
point.
she could like literally just survive.
Yeah, so she used like an old driver's license that she probably looked enough like. And so the only person who like initially was staying with Theresa, it was Robert. Yeah. So Robert, he's like kind of the one that seems like he went down a similar path to Theresa. Like he was doing a lot of crime and he seemed kind of like crazy. They moved to Las Vegas, Theresa and Robert. At this point he was like 19. He was the one that had cut the bullet out of her back.
I see what you were saying earlier where you're like, something at the end might change your mind on whether or not you think that was okay.
Yeah, so, and I will say those sources vary. Like some people say it was Theresa and some people say she told Robert to do it. So keep that in mind, obviously. But so while Theresa and Robert were living together in 1991, Robert, in an attempt to like keep him and his mother like afloat like financially, robbed a bar, and he shot the bartender during the robbery, and the bartender like later died. Like he died in the hospital. He didn't immediately die. So Robert got 16 years in prison for this. So, and now that Theresa didn't really have anything, she didn't have a man to take care of her anymore, she moved to Salt Lake City. So while all this is going on, Terry, bless her heart, is probably going fucking insane because nobody is listening to her. Like, she's telling everybody that'll listen that my mom is crazy, she killed 2 of my siblings, like, and everybody's basically saying, like, something's going on, like, this isn't true, like,
yeah, just like
there's just something wrong with you.
Just like in If You Tell, when Sammy tells her boyfriend, like, yeah, my mom murdered 2 people, and then he's like, what the hell? And she's like, just kidding. Like, again, it seems so insane. It seems like fiction, but it's like this horribly, horribly messed up story that actually happened.
Yeah. No, it's yeah. So a couple years went by of Terry like telling everybody, and so at this point I believe Terry was, weirdly enough, she was like pretty close to where her mother was living. Like she was living in Salt Lake City. Like they didn't know this obviously at the time, but they ended up living like fairly close to each other. It was like a weird coincidence. But so Terry was telling the Utah police like there's some weird shit that went in California, and I think part of the reason they maybe didn't listen to her is they weren't able to make the connections, you know? So so on October 28th, 1993, Terry like contacted America's Most Wanted, which is the TV show, obviously. And they were like, well, you should try to contact the police in the place where the bodies were found in Placer County. And they were like, they'll probably take your claims more seriously because they probably have like some kind of record of like, and you can be like, oh, my sister, for example, was wearing a diaper, or she had a chipped front tooth, or she had a gash in her back where somebody was removing, like, she could like say these things and then it'd be like, oh yeah, we have a Jane Doe from that same year that you're telling us. crazy enough, as soon as she told this specific police department, they were like, oh my God, like, what the fuck? Yeah, we have 2 Jane Does from the years that you're saying that have these defining characteristics. Like, anyway, she explained she knew all these details that there was no way she would know. And so finally somebody was like, oh, she's not crazy, you know? So Teresa's son William was arrested for his involvement on November 4th, 1993, in Woodland, California. Robert Knorr, who was like currently in prison, he was charged with his sister's murders. I think Theresa was charged, and then they were charged as like accessory, I believe. And on November 10th, 1993, Theresa was arrested at her home in Salt Lake City. She was using her maiden name Cross, so she was going by Theresa Cross at the time. And she was, weirdly enough, like working as like an in-home like nurse caretaker for her landlord's 86-year-old mother. So she was like caring for an elderly lady. This person who physically and mentally and verbally abused her children. On November 15th, 1993, Theresa was charged with 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of conspiracy to commit murder, and 2 special circumstances charges, multiple murder and murder by torture. Theresa initially pled not guilty, but then after she realized that Robert was going to testify against her for a reduced sentence, she was trying to escape the death penalty, so she pled guilty.
Possibly the only good thing that Robert did. So good job.
Yeah, well, both of her sons testified against her. Yeah,
she did one thing right.
I think she still should have got the death penalty, but because she pled guilty, they like made a deal with her more or less. On October 17th, 1995, Theresa was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences. She is incarcerated at California Institution for Women in Chino, California. Her parole she's eligible for parole in 2027. Probably won't get it, obviously, but she's technically eligible. William, her son, was sentenced to probation, and he had to go to mandatory like therapy for his involvement, which in a way I feel like that is, if there's anything good out of this, like maybe he won't be as permanently affected.
He'll get some help that he probably
it seems like Robert has already kind of started a life of crime. Like, I don't know if he has as much hope for the future. I know that sounds terrible, but so yeah, William testified against his mom as well, and Robert also. So William didn't serve any time, and Robert, he had the 16 years for the bartender, but he, like, related to this, only got 1 account of accessory after the fact, probably for driving the car to dump the body. He pled guilty, and he got 3 years in prison, which he didn't serve any additional years. He only served like 16. He actually got out in 2013, so I can't remember exactly. I think he had served like 19 or something at that point. I don't know. He's out currently, and then William is also just like living his life, obviously not unscarred or anything. But so Terry, poor Terry, she did not have an easy life ever till the day she died, at age 41, by the way. She got married twice. She lived in Sandy, Utah. She was like a grocery store cashier. She actually, this is where I wrote in the notes that she happened to live like very weirdly close to her mother, which is so weird. I feel like, I don't know, wouldn't she like know somehow? I know that's like weird, but
it's almost like they like in a really creepy bad way, like found their way back
like
to
the
each other.
Universe. I know.
Yeah, like it seems
so weird.
Creepy. I mean, obviously she wouldn't have chose to live next to her mother and abuser if she could have helped
or her mom followed her there.
It seems like neither of them knew the other one was there.
Stupid though. I don't know if Theresa could.
Like, it actually seemed like Theresa didn't know either. So Terry didn't know her mom was there, and her mom didn't know she was there, you know?
Oh, gotcha.
I don't know. Terry had a really hard life. She died in 2011 at age 41. She had like a massive heart attack. And I think in a way, like, she had, I think her heart just like was done. She had
Yeah.
like gone through so much. She'd watched two of her sisters that she was like as close as a sister could be. Like, she had watched them slowly
killed.
die painful deaths,
Yeah.
you know? And I don't know, as somebody who, it's hard to like really understand what kind of trauma that like she had lived with because of how abusive her mother was. Like,
Yeah.
how could you ever have like a
you would
normal
never be
relationship? You couldn't
Yeah.
have a normal relationship with anybody. Like, I don't know. And I think like the only semi good thing to come out of this is that, I don't know, it's hard to find one because Teresa's alive and all of her daughters are dead, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
It's
hope
not
Theresa
very
dies
fair.
soon and in a horrible way.
I mean, I know like life isn't fair, but that's really
This
frustrating.
is like
It
really,
really,
not
like,
fair.
It really seems not fair when I would like, this was like a really tough case, guys, to like research. Like, I don't know. It just is hard to
I understand.
wrap your
It's hard
mind
to
around
hear.
that. Like, it's hard to wrap your mind around somebody being that evil, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
it's hard to even like
Understand
like-
that someone like that evil
that, like a person did that. A person
And
who is
lives
still
in this
currently
world.
alive, who is
Yeah.
currently living, who is not rotting in hell, like, they did those things, you know? Like,
Yeah.
it's just, I don't know. It's really hard to wrap my mind around. So this is like a little bit misplaced because I like found this like later, this little like tidbit, but police like initially, so Rosemary, Teresa's sister, she died at age 39. She was like dumped in Placer County, which is where the other ones were dumped. And she had been strangled to death. I think there was like a part of the police that were like, I wonder if Theresa did that. It doesn't seem like there's any evidence whatsoever. I think it was more of a coincidence, but I just thought that was interesting that she was dumped in 1983, which was the same year that Susan was dumped there. So I think it's just like,
Probably just
Kind of-
coincidence.
it
at
might
the
just be a
same
weird
time-
coincidence. The police don't see, it doesn't seem like the police see any backing to it, but
Yeah.
I don't know. The
It
fact
could-
that she
it
was
could
like
have been.
murdered, like, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Seems a little sketchy.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all I've got this week, guys.
What a wild, crazy.
That's all. It was,
case,
like,
though.
I know that was plenty. That was plenty. That was more than anybody ever asked for, but
That's enough for a lifetime.
this case, I don't know. There was a lot of things that I was like, I want to make sure I do it justice. Like, I want to make sure I like describe how like fucking terrible Theresa is, you know?
Right,
So
yeah.
yeah, sorry really late for all the profanity.
Show profanity.
It's just like so many times I was like reading shit and I was like, holy
the fuck?
fuck. Like,
Yeah.
what the fuck? Like, you know, like it was hard for me to not to cuss. So sorry there was a little more profanity. Like, we try not to really cuss on here, but
I'm probably not the best at it, but you know.
I sorry for the more than normal amount of profanity, but
Not show profanity.
yeah, I mean, I hope you guys have like a really good week. I hope
goes
you
a
listen
lot
to
better.
This episode doesn't get you down. I mean,
yeah, go listen to a fun podcast, go read a fun book, go watch a fun TV show. All of us have recently started watching Good Girls. I don't know if
God.
anybody
If you guys
watches
like
that.
the podcast, oh, how you would love Good Girls.
It's-
It is.
It's a good
Love
one.
it.
Or if
Also-
you're feeling super light, watch like Bridgerton or do something fun for yourself. Do some self-care, paint your nails, do a face mask. What were you gonna say, Abby?
I was just laughing about. Yeah.
Take care of yourself, you know, like
watch some Netflix
it's-
shows. I have 2 recommendations for Netflix shows.
go.
What are yours?
I watched Ginny and Georgia. I like binged it. It's about like, so actually
It's brand new.
I know it just came out and I like binged it in like 2 days. It is about a mother and daughter, and it kind of has, without trying to, I don't want to spoil it at all, like too much, but kind of has some like true crime into it, but it's also like kind of like a love story, and it's also kind of like a normal like coming of age kind of story. I don't know. So you guys should watch that. And then I also binge watched Behind Her Eyes, which also just came out.
That.
And
Oh my gosh, was it good?
folks, I was shook at the end, like shook. It kind of has this almost like supernatural part to it that was actually really interesting, but yeah, that's a really good one too.
I
There's a
remember
lot
seeing-
of sex in that one, so if that's something that like you don't like to watch, I guess, or don't watch it with your mom, but
I remember seeing the trailer for that like forever ago with like
It-
absolutely no context, and I remember
Yes,
thinking like,
coming
oh my
out
god, that
and
looks so
recommended.
creepy.
I started it without knowing anything about it, and then I could not stop watching it, and by the very last episode at the end, I was like literally like mouth to the floor. Oh, and then
Bitch.
Murder Among Mormons I watched the other day.
I
too.
need
really
to
wanna watch
watch
that one.
that.
That's just
that
a
one
3-part series, but that's another one that like when the big like arrest happened, I was like, oh my god.
I have like a weird obsession with Mormon conspiracy and like Mormon like fuckery.
cannot
Like
too.
You gotta
I have
watch
like a weird
started-
obsession with it.
Okay, you guys know how like it'll be like the middle of the night and you like end up in like a YouTube like hole and you just keep clicking on videos.
Yeah.
I remember it was either TLC or Lifetime, but there used to be this like series about like escaping Mormonism essentially, like
Yeah.
the like
Or-
Mormon fundamentalists, and
There
that
was,
one
like, a-
guy is part
yeah.
of the church. And
Yeah.
so like it kind of made me just get way too into like, oh
Mormons.
my god, this stuff's actually happening.
I know
like,
more
girls
about
are-
My-
Mormons than I wanted to.
Right.
My obsession started when I was driving through Utah, and I decided to listen to Last Podcast on the Left. They have like a 6-part series on Mormonism, and I listened to all of it like in the car.
When were you
And
driving through Utah?
when I moved with Thomas
Oh, gotcha.
after the wedding.
The only time
yeah.
you would drive through Utah to get to
Yeah,
another
pretty much. It was also the only time I think I'm ever going to drive through Wyoming.
Fair.
Sorry if you
Dude,
live in Wyoming, but
Wyoming's boring. I don't even think people actually live
it's
there.
just like it's so empty. I'm like, how are there only this many
Are there really
cars?
people there?
Like literally anytime I came up behind a car, it was a 2-lane road and I could literally pass them without even thinking about it because there was never a car ever coming the other way, ever.
That's how I felt driving back from Montana. Like there was just like these long stretches of road, and like
Right?
people
It's hard
go
to
as
believe
fast or
that
as
there's,
slow
like,
as they
places
want.
where people just like people don't live there. I don't know. It's weird. Thanks for listening, everybody.
But yeah, anyway, there's like
That's
a
a long
weird little
tangent
like
for what
end
to do.
tangent.
Yeah.
But
after
yeah,
watching
take
this,
care take
listening
care
to
of
this.
yourself.
Worry about yourself.
Be a weirdo, be into true crime, but like take care of yourself, you know, because
And don't-
we're in a not post COVID yet, but we're in a mid COVID 2021, and I don't know, you deserve it. Take care of yourself.
I feel
Anyway,
like we're getting so close. But also reminder, don't turn a blind eye if you see some weird shit happening.
yes, see something, say
Yeah,
something.
there you go. See something. For this one.
Follow us on Instagram at Who What Where Podcast. Find us on Facebook, Who What Where Podcast. If you're listening to this on YouTube, leave us a comment down below, like and subscribe. That'd be awesome. Send us a DM. And we will see you guys next Monday. Hope you have a great week.